So I've heard part 2 was ending. It's been quite a while since my last part 2 video, partly because I have been working a full-time job that only came with a single day off per week. Another reason was that I also wanted the story to develop a bit more because the story back then was going a bit too slowly for my liking. And now, I think it's a great time to look at what the story has achieved, what kind of challenges it faced, what it did well or not so well.
Hey there, I'm Dawei, your old friend.
Roughly 2 years ago, we got part 2, new story setting, new graphics, new stuff to play with. It showed that the game was still getting love even after the end of the story. But before part 2 proper, there was a small interlude that dealt with the unfinished business that didn't make the finale cut. Though most importantly, it introduced the funniest character in-game. I like Rita because she does some wacky stuff when the story is usually pretty heavy or serious in tone. The reason I'm bringing her up is the concept that she was introduced with, aliens from the other planets inside and later on, outside the solar system. Quickly summarizing what happened so far, Earth after finality got bored one day and sent people to check out Mars. There they found the planet to be a massive quantum computer that was running a simulation on Mars history. Coincidentally, the people who stumbled upon it seems to cause some signals to get beamed into the goddess Kiana's head and made her fall asleep and not wake up. No one had a clue what to do to fix that, nor do they know how to operate this alien machine to find more clues. But lucky for them, this random Venus god clone person that they had a fight with not that long ago showed up to offer her help, totally with no ulterior motives. With no better choice, they let her do her thing. And this is where we check up on our cast. The plan was to explore the computer with a team of 3 plus an extra one we'll get to. We have the main protagonist, Dream Seeker, who steadily develops over the story. With her, 2 Earthlings attached to her so she can do her own thing as she seemed pretty important to the machine. These 2 only really get their time around the midway point. You can kind of categorize the story into 3 main sections or arcs if you will. Early on was its weakest point as nothing really happens. Most time was spent giving you its setting while leaving character stuff in the background as hooks, which while understandable, isn't free of controversy. You get to know about Langshu, a post-apocalyptic dump with 7 people who's keeping the place from burning down, and it is our job to get their help to get things under control. Along the way we go through a story arc for one of them which personally was pretty nice, but then came the fake out where turns out this was a simulation and you just cleared your first stage so you gotta move on. Sometimes Rita gets bored and do some cool shit, and that is why she's the GOAT. After this point, the story can now dedicate its time to flesh out the main cast with Helia and Corey getting their own time to shine, but mostly Helia, which arguably is the main highlight of part 2. That said, there's a group of characters I've mostly glossed over, which is the 7 Shoes. That's because the story just left them behind. And I don't mean that in a way that they weren't any time dedicated to learning about them, but because of how the story was set up, the cast would go through stages that each ran a different time period of Mars history, going from the recent to the most ancient. The unfortunate effect meant that whatever happened to anyone outside the main cast plus the real people outside, with a few exceptions, would not carry over to the next part of the story. The only thing that can really matter was knowing a certain people does a certain thing at one time. Which is where there might be a problem, cause just knowing might not be enough to make it worth your time. What do I mean by this? I think it isn't enough to make you care when there's no reward that came after. The 7 Shoes stopped being the focus since the fake out and kept getting shelved harder and harder as the story goes on, which made the time dedicated to them felt pretty pointless at times. That said, this was a plot point that was brought up by Vita, which, while the main cast may think otherwise, I would have to agree with Vita for this one. As even up until the recent chapter, there's still no genuine conclusions for the 7 Shoes yet that can even be considered a reward for caring about them that isn't just more information on what they did. Now looking at where things are headed with Ashita last chapter, it might go towards each of the shoes getting their memories back from the other stages so they can be like complete. Though I do wonder how they're gonna handle the logistics considering there can be like, for example, Songxue from the first stage who revived like a Hersher, but then in another stage she gets to be ordinary with her friends and whatnot. So like, which state do they pull the shoes from? But I digress. This actually reminds me of Amphorius that also dealt with a similar issue, but way better. Cause while most things that happen to the Flame Chasers wouldn't matter in the next cycle, They were able to solve that issue very easily by making that a plot point and having characters give the unaware the rundown. So the rewards from caring about them can trickle in sooner. You can have Aglaya making fun of you, seeing her being happy-go-lucky and shit, or Cassares remarking how unfortunate it was that she didn't get to interact with us much in this one cycle. These things are what can keep players interested so they can stick through with the story, which made the eventual payback even better when it comes. And I fear that the payback that would be for the 7 shoes would have come too late to be worthwhile. I recognize that you cannot apply what Amphoris did to part 2 due to how the story was set up, but I hope you can see the similarities between them. And then we get to the endgame portion where Vita thinks this is taking too long and once again proves that she's the queen and had Dreamseeker skip a bunch of stages that presumably doesn't matter and skip all the way to the last one. Though not without her getting caught in a tight spot, but it's alright, she'll walk it off. This is like quite a weird plot point considering the stages that we walked past were the one that Senna showed to Dreamseeker at the start, like some kind of preview of what she's gonna be seeing. Whatever it is, this finale would be focused on Senna, who's technically a part of the main cast but disappeared ever since the fake out, with only Dreamseeker remembering her. It's really just this mystery that was the reason that kept her going until now. Most of the runtime is spent telling about how Lo Sing came to be, or like the Mars civilization. It was a settlement created by aliens from outside the solar system. They set up shop here to make a new home for themselves as their previous home had gone to hell after a random dragon dropped the immortality bomb on them. Unfortunately, they didn't fare that much better here as the Mars variant of the Honkai made sure this would be a miserable experience. In desperation, Senna gave us what would happen if Kevin had won on the moon. She did Project Stigma, made a whole bubble universe the size of a planet, and then put everyone inside without telling most of them. Sure, they escaped Honkai, but now they needed to contend with the Mars variant of the Sea of Quanta, the Sea of Data, which Senna spent her time keeping at bay ever since with her anchors and various powers. Eventually, she couldn't keep up with the corruption and ended up sacrificing herself to keep everything from going down with her. This was done to the dismay of her greatest fan, Layla, who's like some kind of friendly Honkai life form that stayed by her side. Though her admiration might go a little too far in some degrees, as recent events has shown. Grieving over the loss of Senna, she got one of the shoes to make a quantum simulation computer thing for the express purpose of bringing back Senna with the Dreamseeker, the logistics of which would probably be known next chapter. But all this relates to Senna as Layla kind of did bring her back, though she had her tethered to the last stage, which is where the gang is at. Which raises the question about the early game Senna from pre-fake out. It seems she was another version that Senna just wished into existence cause she wanted to go on adventures with Layla, or in this case, the good ending Layla. Most likely, God Senna will probably perish and leave behind a new Senna born from her wish. That will be the story up until the recent chapter. Though that's not the entire picture. There's a lot more factors that affects what happened in the story, and one of them is the content. If you take a look at the new battlesuits that we have had since part 2, you might notice an interesting pattern where part 2 characters have not gotten as many battlesuits as returning part 1 characters, and that is without counting out Universe Alicia Pink Love Elf. Point is, there has been a significant focus on the returning part 1 cast. You might think this might coincide with their importance in the main story, but that is hardly the case, as most of them come with only their own side stories and do not appear in the main story, if at all. The only ones who has any presence would be Terry and Duandel. Technically, we had more part 2 characters if you count Astro Orb, but Astro Orb is kinda lame, cause you barely see them in combat, and best you can do is walk around with them in a hub. So really, why the big focus on battlesuits for seemingly unimportant characters, narratively speaking? Maybe this could be explained away because of part 2 not performing as well as expected. And as a product that makes money, money will talk. Cutbacks to investment, longer development cycles, or even cuts to its own content, to which nowhere is this more clear than in the animated shorts department, or lack thereof. The last one being for Songxue, and people might call me a normie for this, but animated shorts has always been a big part of the game's marketing, so losing them has been a great detriment to the game. And I don't mean this as an attack on the people working on the game, as they seem to put a lot of effort into what they do, as the in-game render framework that they've been using has helped improve the mundane moments in the story where the characters' personalities can shine a lot easier than some other games that bring in a lot more money. I'm looking at you, Star Rail. Nowadays, most major story beats cutscene works are handled with the in-game rendered ones, which due to the game age, even with the engine upgrades can only do so much to hold a candle to what we used to have, or the various competitors on the market right now. You might call this feeling being let down. And I don't want to drag down the mood too hard on the video, but I also want to mention other things like the Nothing Burger Star Rail collab, which if it went like the Genshin one, there wouldn't be any issue really. But then they had Sparkle show up in the main story, and after that, done nothing with it. I honestly expect Vita to pull out her detonator in the finale to blow up Layla's plan with her dream or whatever, which would be funny, but overall, maybe we just need to move on from the fact that the game is long past its heyday and no longer Hoyo's favorite child. In that case, this has been my piece on the part 2 story, but how much enjoyment did you get from part 2 personally? Or maybe you have other complaints that you want to talk about? Feel free to put it down in the comments, but otherwise, this has been Potato Almanac, and until next time.